All India Radio presents Morning News. Good morning, I'm Sarabjit Kaur and with me is Saira Mujtaba. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to leave on a 3-day visit to US today. Prime Minister to hold bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden, attend first in-person Quad Summit and address UN General Assembly. 76th session of UN General Assembly gets underway in New York. SAARC Foreign Ministers meeting slated for Saturday in New York cancelled. India's COVID vaccination coverage crosses 82 crore mark. Education Ministry forms National Steering Committee for Development of National Curriculum Frameworks. Air Marshal V.R. Chaudhary to be the next Chief of the Indian Air Force. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party wins parliamentary elections but fails to secure majority. And in IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals beat Punjab Kings by 2 runs in final ball thriller in Dubai. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is going on, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and also help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075.
As our nation celebrates the 75th year of independence, a series of events is being organized by the government as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. To commemorate the occasion as a Jan Utsav, All India Radio News brings to its listeners a special quiz on India's freedom movement and its glorious history. The quiz is being conducted every Monday and Tuesday in Morning News since 16th of August and will continue till 15th of August 2022. India Post has joined hands as the logistics partner with All India Radio News for the Amrit Mahotsav quiz. Recalling our yesterday's question, which incident forced Mahatma Gandhi to halt the non-cooperation movement? The correct answer is Chauri Chaura incident. As a consequence of the non-cooperation movement, the British Raj was shaken to its foundations for the first time since the revolt of 1857. Then, in February 1922, a group of peasants attacked and torched a police station in the hamlet of Chauri Chaura in United Provinces, present-day Uttar Pradesh. Several constables perished in the conflagration. This act of violence prompted Gandhiji to call off the movement altogether. AIR News got an overwhelming response from its listeners across the world, and the one lucky winner of the quiz is Ms. Jigme Yangchan from Leh, Ladakh.
Hello, my name is Jigme Yangchan and the program Amrit Mahotsav broadcast in AR FM Rainbow India is very useful for students like us. I am listening this program from Leh Ladakh and I am very happy to be a part of this program. Through this program, I came to know about glorious history of India and came to know a lot about Indian freedom fighters.
Congratulations to Ms. Yangchan from Team AIR News. The next question of Amrit Mahotsav quiz will be shared with listeners on Monday, 27th of September. Celebrate 75 years of India's independence by participating in Amrit Mahotsav quiz with AIR News.
And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will leave on a 3-day visit to US today. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will hold discussions with the US Vice President Kamala Harris. Then he will be interacting with the top CEOs of US companies. On Friday, Mr. Modi will hold the first in-person bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden. The 2 nations look forward to take stock of the developments in Afghanistan, increasing radicalization and terrorism, Indo-Pacific, cybersecurity, COVID vaccination initiative, and issues related to climate change, among others. Briefing the media in New Delhi, Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla said, Prime Minister Modi and US President Biden are expected to deliberate on ways to bolster bilateral ties in trade, investment and defense and security in their in-person talks in Washington. Mr. Shringla said the bilateral talks between the two leaders are expected to figure out ways to deal with radicalization and terrorism, besides major regional issues including developments in Afghanistan.
The bilateral meetings would also feature current regional security situation following recent developments in Afghanistan, our stakes as a neighbor and a long-standing and preferred development partner of the people of Afghanistan. In this context, we would undoubtedly discuss the need to stem radicalism, extremism, cross-border terrorism, and the dismantling of global terrorist networks.
The first in-person Quad security dialogue between the US, Japan, Australia and India will also take place on Friday. President Biden will be hosting Prime Minister Modi, Japanese PM Yoshihide Suga and Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison at the White House. On Saturday, Prime Minister Modi will be addressing the UN General Assembly. He is the first speaker on that day and the global community will be eagerly waiting to listen to him. A report from our correspondent covering the Prime Minister's US visit.
The US visit will mark Prime Minister Modi's first foreign tour in 6 months. It will also be the first time he will be visiting the country after President Joe Biden assumed office. He will participate in the first in-person Quad, a grouping of India, US, Australia and Japan, led a summit in the White House. Virtually addressing the Quad summit in March this year, Prime Minister said Quad is an important pillar of stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Mr. Modi will also meet top American CEOs during his visit. After concluding his engagements in Washington, Prime Minister will travel to New York. He will address the general debate of the high-level segment of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly on September 25th in New York. With Atul Tiwari in Washington, Sobhagya, Air News, Delhi.
Now we go over live to our special correspondent, Atul Kumar Tiwari, who is in Washington, D.C. to cover the Prime Minister's visit. Atul, we just heard the report on the Prime Minister's visit. How is it different from the previous visits?
Well, Sarabjit, to begin with, Prime Minister's visit to US has many efforts to its credit. For the first time, he will be having a one-to-one dialogue with the US President Joe Biden and also the Vice President Kamala Harris. It will then be followed by the first in-person meeting of Quad leaders in Washington. Besides, Prime Minister Modi is the first speaker on 25th September to address UN General Assembly in New York. And the global community will be eagerly waiting to listen to him. We have to note that these happenings are taking place at a time when the world is grappling with the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, and it will be a befitting reply to see how the global community is tackling it.
Atul, what are the preparations, especially in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic?
Sarabjit, here in Washington, the meetings have been planned and organized keeping in mind the COVID safety protocols. There are no big community events this time. Even the number of top CEOs meeting with Prime Minister has been kept to a select few. Similarly, for bilateral and Quad meetings, adequate arrangements have been made. At UN General Assembly, the number of heads of states or the governments attending the summit in person has been reduced. In Washington, the citizens have been following the guidelines everywhere from airports to workplaces. Schools have been reopened here on 6th September. However, as per CDC guidelines, use of mask is required indoors. Although in outdoor and at open places, people who have completed their COVID-19 vaccination can move around safely.
Thank you, Atul, for that update. The 76th session of United Nations General Assembly got underway in New York last night. Over 100 global leaders are attending the deliberations. These include US President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and British Premier Boris Johnson. This session coincides with the current UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres set for another 5 years term at the helm of affairs of the world body. US President Joe Biden was the first speaker as per the tradition. In his maiden speech to the UN General Assembly, Mr. Biden urged the nations to forge a global unity against common threats like COVID-19 pandemic, technological threats, and autocratic nations. The US President said bombs and bullets can't defend against COVID-19 or its future variants. He underlined the need to make use of force as the last resort and not the first. Mr. Biden said, "Our security, prosperity and freedom are interconnected as never before." Henceforth, he made a strong plea for good governance and desist from the use of force in the larger interest of democracy.
On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session, a series of meetings is being held. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will be meeting foreign ministers of G20 countries on Afghanistan. He is also scheduled to take part in the P4 meeting today. The group of P4 nations include India, Japan, Brazil and Germany, which are seeking a permanent seat in the expanded UN Security Council after long overdue reforms. South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation or SAARC foreign ministers meet slated to be held on Saturday in New York has been cancelled. It was to be held in person on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. However, the Nepalese Foreign Ministry issued a communique saying that the meet stands cancelled owing to lack of concurrence from all member states. Nepal was the host of the meet. SAARC is the regional intergovernmental organization of 8 countries of South Asia, namely Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan and Sri Lanka.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday held a telephonic conversation with French President Emmanuel Macron. The two leaders discussed regional issues, including recent developments in Afghanistan. In this context, they shared their concerns about possible spread of terrorism, narcotics, illicit weapons and human trafficking, as well as the need to ensure human rights, rights of women and minorities. They reviewed the increasing bilateral collaboration in the Indo-Pacific region and the important role that the India-France partnership plays in promoting stability and security in the region. The leaders agreed to maintain close and regular consultations in the spirit of the India-France strategic partnership, which both countries cherish deeply. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will share his thoughts with the people in the country and abroad in the Mann Ki Baat program on All India Radio on 26th of this month. It will be the 81st episode of the monthly radio program. The Prime Minister has invited people to share their ideas on topics he should address on the coming episode of the program. People can share their views in the Nemo app or MyGov Open Forum. They can also dial the toll-free number 1-800-11-7800 and record their message for the Prime Minister in either Hindi or English. In the program Spotlight, News Services Division of All India Radio is broadcasting a special series, Seva aur Samarpan 20 Saal Sushasan Ke. Today the theme is Swachh Bharat, Clean and Green Climate. It showcases Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership and commitment to Swachh Bharat and his efforts to achieve climate justice. This special program can be heard tonight on FM Gold channel and additional frequencies from 9:15 p.m. onwards. This program will also be available on our website newsonair.com and on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. Raising awareness about coronavirus in Corona Jagrukta series at 9:30 to 10 tonight. So keep listening to All India Radio News for the latest developments.
Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar has said that the centre is fully committed to supporting the states to increase production and productivity and to face the challenges posed by climate change and rain-fed agriculture. Inaugurating the National Conference on Agriculture for Rabi Campaign 2021-22 through video conferencing, Mr. Tomar said, Prime Minister Modi has always aimed to protect and support farmers and several steps have been taken to make farmers self-reliant or Atmanirbhar. He urged the states to use water, electricity and fertilizers judiciously and to use nano-urea, which is less costly and beneficial for land fertility. The minister said that Krishi Vigyan Kendra should reach out to the small farmers so that they can benefit from various schemes of the government. He said the states should also ensure that PM Kisan and Kisan Credit Card or KCC should reach every farmer. Mr. Tomar informed that more than 2.25 crore KCCs have been distributed. through which farmers have been given loans of more than 2.25 lakh crore rupees. You are listening to the morning news on All India Radio. A reminder of the headlines before we move on. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to leave on a 3-day visit to US today. Prime Minister to hold bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden, attend first in-person Quad Summit and address UN General Assembly. 76th session of UN General Assembly gets underway in New York. SAARC Foreign Ministers meeting slated for Saturday in New York cancelled. India's COVID vaccination coverage crosses 82 crore mark. Education Ministry forms National Steering Committee for Development of National Curriculum Frameworks. Air Marshal V.R. Chaudhary to be next Chief of Indian Air Force. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party wins parliamentary elections but fails to secure majority. And in IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals beat Punjab Kings by 2 runs in final ball thriller in Dubai. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle @AIR News Alerts.
In a landmark achievement, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed the 82 crore mark. Till now, more than 82 crore 57 lakh 80,000 vaccine doses have been administered to the people. Union Health Ministry said more than 68 lakh 26,000 vaccine doses were administered yesterday. The Ministry of Education has formed the National Steering Committee for the Development of National Curriculum Frameworks. The committee will be chaired by former ISRO Chairman Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, Chancellor of National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration Mahesh Chandra Pant, Chairman of National Book Trust Govind Prasad Sharma, Vice Chancellor of the Jamia Millia Islamia University Najma Akhtar, First Vice Chancellor of Central Tribal University of Andhra Pradesh T.V. Kattimani, Guest Professor at IIT Gandhinagar and Indian author of French origin Michel Danino, and American mathematician of Indian origin Manjul Bhargav are part of the 12-member committee. As per the perspectives of the NEP 2020, the committee will develop 4 national curriculum frameworks: the National Curriculum Framework for School Education, National Curriculum for Early Childhood Care and Education, National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education, and National Curriculum Framework for Adult Education.
The government has decided to appoint Air Marshal V.R. Chaudhary, presently Vice Chief of Air Staff, as the next Chief of the Indian Air Force. He will assume charge after the retirement of Air Chief Marshal Rakesh Kumar Singh Bhadauria on the 30th of this month. Air Marshal V.R. Chaudhary was commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force on 29th of December 1982 and has held various command, staff and instructional appointments at various levels, including the present one as Vice Chief of Air Staff. Air Marshal Chaudhary is decorated with Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal and Vayu Sena Medal.
Former Hindi newsreader of All India Radio, Ramanuj Prasad Singh, passed away in Gurugram last night. He was 86. Mr. Singh's deep voice and relaxed style of reading endeared him to All India Radio listeners from the beginning. He served AIR for 3 decades and became a well-known name among the common people for his newsreading for years. In Assam, nearly 2,500 rhino horns to be burnt publicly at Bokakat today. The Assam government has decided to destroy 2,479 rhino horns, while 94 horns will be preserved for academic purposes. On the other hand, 50 horns would be kept aside for ongoing court cases. Chief Minister Himant Biswa Sarma, several ministers and senior Forest Department officials, among others, will be present at the event to be held at the Bokakat Public Playground today. As our nation celebrates the 75th year of independence, a series of events are being organized by the government as a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Let's listen now to our special program, Azadi Ka Safar.
Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav.
Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News. Birth of a Nation. India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest movements the modern world has ever witnessed. AIR News brings you a glimpse of the struggle every day.
100 years ago, on this day in 1921, Mahatma Gandhi took the epoch-making decision to only wear a simple dhoti and shawl for the rest of his life, a vow that became part of history as well as Mahatma's own identity.
All India Radio spoke to Director, National Gandhi Museum, A. Annamalai, about the historic day.
Considered to be one of the most important events in Gandhi's life, he changed his clothes like a poor farmer. The historic event took place on September 22nd, 1921 in the city of Madurai in Tamil Nadu. The people of Madurai gathered in thousands to welcome Gandhi, who came through Trichy, Srirangam and Dindigul on September 21st, 1921. Gandhi stayed at Ramji Kalyanji's house at West Massey Street as his guest. That night, Rajaji and P.S.S. Rajan had a long discussion with Gandhi on his decision, but they could not convince Gandhi. He announced that he decided to change to a simple dress like a farmer. A baba was arranged and he shaved his head completely. The next morning, he took a bath, put on a cloth around his lower body and another cloth over his upper body, and proceeded to address a public meeting at what is now known as Gandhi Hotel on Kamaraj Road, Madurai.
Gandhiji became one with the poor through his attire, and in the infamous words of imperialist British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, became the half-naked fakir who defeated the might of the British Empire. Today we also remember the great educationist Karamveer Bhavrao Patil, who was born on this day in 1887 at Kolhapur, Maharashtra. Greatly influenced by the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, he was a freedom fighter who understood the critical importance of self-reliant mass education as an integral part of the freedom movement.
He founded the Rayat Education Society and played an important role in educating the so-called backward castes and the low-income people. He was a prominent member of Satya Shodhak Samaj, founded by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, and used to perform Satya Shodhaki Jalsas in the villages of Maharashtra and awaken the people to the dire consequences of the social evils of the time.
During his lifetime, Bhavrao established 108 secondary schools, 578 voluntary schools, 6 training colleges, 3 colleges and 38 boarding schools, with many of them being devoted to girls' education.
During a public meeting in 1921, Bhavrao met Gandhiji at Mumbai and was highly impressed by Gandhiji's appearance in a loincloth and his philosophy of khadi. Following this encounter, Bhavrao decided to adopt the khadi attire and follow Gandhian principles in everyday life.
Bhavrao adopted the motto, education through self-help and earn while you learn, which Gandhiji had enshrined in his Nai Talim system of education.
Bhavrao's sterling achievements is that within himself, he combined the inspiration from 2 Mahatmas, Gandhi and Phule, and carried forward the common principles of social reform. May we get inspired by his passion for mass education and work towards ensuring it for all Indians.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News. See you in the next episode tomorrow.
स्वाधीनता संग्राम के वे निशान जो साक्षी हैं हमारे सेनानियों के संघर्ष और बलिदान के। आकाशवाणी समाचार ला रहा है विशेष श्रृंखला निशान। हर बुधवार को शाम 4:45 पर कार्यक्रम परिक्रमा में FM गोल्ड 100.1 मेगाहर्ट्ज पर।
In today's episode of Nishan, we will bring you the story of Chandrasekhar Azad Park.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party has narrowly won parliamentary elections, but it failed to secure a majority. This is Mr. Trudeau's third federal election win. The Liberals are projected to win 158 seats, short of the 170 seats needed for majority Mr. Trudeau was seeking with his early election call. The Conservatives were leading or elected in 119 seats, 2 less than in 2019. The leftist New Democrats were leading or elected in 25, while the Bloc Québécois were poised to win 34 and the Greens were down to 2.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated Prime Minister of Canada Justin Trudeau on his victory in the elections. In a tweet, Mr. Modi said he is looking forward to continue working with Mr. Trudeau to further strengthen India-Canada relations as well as the cooperation on global and multilateral issues.
In IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals beat Punjab Kings by 2 runs in final ball thriller in Dubai last night. Put into bat first, Rajasthan Royals posted 185 runs in 20 overs, riding on Yashasvi Jaiswal's 49 of 36 balls. Today, Delhi Capitals will take on Sunrisers Hyderabad in Dubai at 7:30 p.m.
And now let us take a look at the weather forecast for today. The national capital Delhi is likely to witness generally cloudy sky with moderate rain. Mumbai will also have generally cloudy sky with heavy rain. Chennai again will have thunderstorms with rain. Kolkata, the minimum temperature was 26 degrees Celsius, maximum will be around 29 degrees. Srinagar will have partly cloudy sky with 1 or 2 spells of rain or thunder showers. Jammu, the minimum temperature was 23 degrees, maximum will be around 33 degrees. Leh is expected to have generally cloudy sky. Gilgit, the temperatures will hover between 16 and 29 degrees Celsius. Muzaffarabad, the minimum temperature will be 19 degrees, maximum will be around 33 degrees. Ahmedabad will have generally cloudy sky with light rain. Hyderabad again will have generally cloudy sky with light rain. Bengaluru, the temperatures will hover between 20 and 29 degrees Celsius. Puducherry, the temperatures will vary between 22 and 35 degrees Celsius.
And now an overview of today's newspapers. Marking the beginning of the high-level segment of United Nations General Assembly, U.S. President calls it a decisive decade for the world, states Hindustan Times. With the stage all set for the much-anticipated bilateral meeting, Afghan crisis on Modi-Biden radar, writes the statesman. Clearing the decks for a high-powered committee, HC lets Delhi government panel probe oxygen deaths, is the lead in the Times of India. Pushing the country's food grain production for the season to all-time high, record paddy yield dip in oilseeds likely this kharif, writes The Hindu. In response to UK government's move to treat fully vaccinated Indians as unvaccinated, India calls UK's travel policy discriminatory, headlines the Business Standard. The Asian Age takes note as Taliban named deputy ministers as government expands, but women still out. And finally, moving towards gender parity in the country, NDA to open doors for women in 2022 has been covered prominently by the Pioneer.
And now, before we end the bulletin, the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to leave on a 3-day visit to US today. Prime Minister to hold bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden, attend first in-person Quad Summit and address UN General Assembly. 76th session of UN General Assembly gets underway in New York. SAARC Foreign Ministers meeting slated for Saturday in New York cancelled. India's COVID vaccination coverage crosses 82 crore mark. Education Ministry forms National Steering Committee for development of national curriculum frameworks. Air Marshal V.R. Chaudhary to be next Chief of the Indian Air Force. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party wins parliamentary elections but fails to secure majority. And in IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals beat Punjab Kings by 2 runs in final ball thriller in Dubai. For details of these stories and more, log on to our website www.newsonair.gov.in and News on AIR app. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.